Okay, so I don't think you could really see this, okay, but let me try. Could you be my assistant, ma'am? Okay. Let me show you how nice it is to be back in Ohio, okay? But I want to tell you, never a discouraging word about our friends up north in Michigan, okay? They have been terrific, and we're expecting some good news out of there. And but it's so nice to be here with all of you in Cleveland, right? In Cleveland, Ohio, the beloved city. And hey, I want you all to know how much I've been talking about you all over the country. Are you aware of this? I mean, I keep talking about Ohio. People know more about Ohio. And there's so many things I have to say to you. And secondly, if you don't think that I have been able to feel your support, because you know, when a governor's out there running for president, people can have all kinds of thoughts about that. And I have felt the entire time, I hope I'm right, that you've been proud of me. Proud for me to carry the Buckeye banner. And how about a good round of applause for our Lieutenant Governor, Mary Taylor, okay? So we give her one more round of applause. And you know, that little sweater and that little, what do you have on there, little thing in your hair? You need to come out here, we need to have a picture, okay? You need to come out here and have a picture. Come on, sweetheart. Okay, smile, okay? All right, give her a round of applause, huh? What is your name? How old are you? 11. 11 years old. And is that your brother there and your sister? And how you guys all getting along? Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay. Okay. Step on down. So I have been, you know, crisscrossing the country, coming home at times to our great state. And what I have been telling them is really kind of the Ohio story. And many of you remember this story, of course. And you remember when you gave me a shot at trying to really help fix things across the state, and particularly in Cleveland. And you know, one of my dreams was to make sure that Cleveland could rise. It was always one of my dreams and my purposes. And you might recall the story, or maybe you haven't heard it before, but the story of when I used to leave that little town in the Keys Rocks right outside of Pittsburgh, and we would come with my mother and my father and my aunt and my uncle and my cousin, and we would come to Ohio. And I'll never forget, we would be riding in a car and we would cross over into Ohio, and my Uncle Harry would say, "Johnny, we just entered the promised land," the state of Ohio. And we would go to Elyria, to Vermillion, to Peck's Cottages. Anybody ever heard of that place, huh? And we would go there, and we'd fish, and we would be together, and we'd just paddle ball. We'd knock the thing right around. The ball would get knocked around on a big string, and we'd go to the little store, and it was so fantastic. And so as I grew up and went to Ohio State, and then to have an opportunity to be governor and come here and work with all the officials and with the folks of Cleveland, we've been rising. And if we think about just our state for a little while and take you back just for a second, when I came in, we were $8 billion, 20% of our operating budget was in the hole. We were in a tax and spend mode. We just kept raising taxes. There were 350,000 families who suffered economic loss. In other words, to put it in blunt terms, they lost their jobs. And I went to New York, and they told me in New York that they were going to downgrade our credit. I said, Ohio's finished, it's done. There is no way that that place can be turned around. And I said, well, you just don't understand Ohio. I mean, we're like a 7'1" center who forgot how to dribble for a couple weeks. And we're going to turn this whole thing around because we have what it takes in the state of Ohio to reach out to all of America and at the same time to large parts of the world. Just give me a chance. And you all remember that first year. It was like, now who the heck did we vote for? We voted for that Kasich. What is he doing out there? Shaking everything up. And it's sort of the mode in which I operate. You make me CEO, I'm going to go and do things. And for those that live in the neighborhoods, which so many of you do, these blue-collar neighborhoods where you're working, you play by the rules, I hope you're beginning to understand that I'll give you that voice, because we don't want to leave anybody behind, sir. You know, you look at politicians and you wonder, they don't get me, you get angry. And look, if we think about the voters who are disaffected, if we think about those who are, you know, some of these Trump supporters, okay, let me tell you about them, what they worry about, and some of you here worry about this. Am I going to keep my job? Is there going to be another lousy trade deal and somehow I'm going to lose my job? Am I ever going to get a pay raise? Can I put money in a bank? They got my money. Will they give me some interest on my money? Or my kid went to college, rung up all these debts, and he or she's still living in our basement. I mean, it's legitimate concern. And if I'm a senior, I'm thinking they're going to take my Social Security. And if I'm a kid, I become convinced that I have a better chance of seeing a UFO than a Social Security check. This anxiety is real. And I understand it because growing up in that little town in the Keys Rocks, that's how I grew up. The wind blew the wrong way and people found themselves out of work. Guy was talking to me last night about some pension system that was rickety and rockety with his union. I looked at him, I said, well, I'm told that when my uncles who worked in steel mills, when it came time for them to retire, they shut the plant down. You know, I get all this. And we have to fix it in the country just like we fixed it here in the state. And then today, there we go, there. So today when we think about it, look, everything's not fixed. We're not out of the woods yet. But we're up now about 420,000 private sector jobs. I mean, it is an incredible movement towards positive. Our wages are growing faster than the national average, and we now are running a $2 billion surplus. Our credit is strong, our pensions are strong, and then I think what I'm most proud of is we've left nobody in the shadows. And we're trying not to, okay? And that's why I took the opportunity to do what Ronald Reagan did 5 separate times. And that is to expand the Medicaid program so that the mentally ill, who it's so easy, look, we made a promise to them when we shut the institutions. We said, don't worry, we'll get you out of the big institutions, we'll get you in the neighborhood and everything will be fine. But we got them out of the institutions, we didn't do anything for them, and where are they? Many of them are living under a bridge or they're living in prison. That's a disgrace and a scar on our country, and we're working in Ohio to get them on their feet so they can live out their God-given purpose. And also for the drug addicted, you know, it's been the history of these drug programs that they go into prison, they're drug addicted, they come out of the prison, they meet the drug dealer on the corner, and they end up back in prison. Well, now we're having an 80% success rate in treating them in the prison, releasing to the community, and never seeing them enter the prison again. And that's a significant thing. And for the working poor, I mean, look, this is a crazy system where they can't take a pay raise or get a promotion because they lose more than what they gain. We're working to change that whole system so people have an incentive to get out of poverty, to get on their feet, to progress, and become very economically successful. and our friends in the in the developmental disabled community. Now we have autism coverage. So mom and dad don't get bankrupted over the challenges of autism. And then for our friends in the minority community, we know there are a number of them that think the system doesn't work for us, doesn't work for them. And we're doing everything we can to bring about entrepreneurship. And we've seen violence, racial divisions in many parts of this country. But here in Cleveland, working with our community leaders, working with the ministers, working with the activists, working with the police and the law enforcement, putting people together. We all know we've had some tough challenges. And it's okay to get out there and protest and express what you feel. But I think being in a position where we brought people together has allowed us to go through some very difficult times without violence in the great city of Cleveland, because people were united here, and what they said is we're not going backwards. We're moving forward as a city of Cleveland. And you know what? I like Stephon Curry. Okay. Bring it on, Stephon, because you got the Cavaliers in your way, all the way to a championship, huh? When we get into that NBA playoff. And I'll take credit for that, too, if that's okay. So, look, I want to go and do this for the country, but I'm not like going to disappear. One of my daughters didn't want me to run for president because she said, well, Daddy, when you run, you usually win, and if you win, then I'm in high school, and I don't want to have to move to Washington. I said, well, okay, sweetheart, I'll just come home every weekend. It'll just be like being a congressman, right? So I want to thank you one more time, and the whole country's watching. Frankly, the whole world is going to be watching Ohio and the Buckeyes first. I hope you notice something. For a very, very long time, I labored in obscurity. And a lot of people said, well, what the heck's he doing out there? But Ohioans really don't quit. We never quit. And now we're rising in the polls, and people are starting to hear the message. But I tell you something, we did not rise in the polls based on somebody else's terms. Our campaign is rising in the polls based on a vision and a positive message and staying out of the mudslinging and the negative, okay? We're doing it the right way. Thank you. So after all that, let me just take a few questions. Let me tell you what's been happening. These town halls have been a remarkable experience for me. They've changed my life. They really have, in a very positive way. And maybe as we take some questions here, I'll be able to get into why that's the case and what has happened, but it's all good. If we remember that the spirit of our country doesn't rest in some politician in Columbus or some politician in Washington. It rests in all of our neighborhoods, in our families. That's where the spirit of America resides, okay? Yes, sir, right back here. Well, look, I'm going to win Ohio because you're all going to help me, and we're not going to let this go back, okay? But, sir, I tell you, I think the answer in politics is really not about the negative. I mean, records are fair, but personal attacks, I think, are just not acceptable. And getting into a personal attack game with him in particular, I don't believe works. And I'll tell you why I don't think it works. Because many of the people who support him really share these concerns that we all have about our lives. Are they going to get better? Are our kids going to have a better America than we got from our parents?